Hey guys, it's Alex Base here. Welcome to my channel. Today I've got the iPhone 16e, and this is a very peculiar phone. I have no idea what dimension of how actually this one came out of, but it's here. Let's have a look at it. And I've got the 8 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage. It actually starts from 128 gigabytes of storage. And there is absolutely nothing special about this phone, apart from the fact that it is probably the most hilarious phone of the year. You're going to find out later on why. And it's got the typical build of an iPhone, of course, and only one camera on the back. Un. And on the front there is the ugly notch as well from like 4 years ago and before that. And again, single camera, of course, on the front. And it's got very nice stereo speakers. We're going to hear them later on. And also, of course, IP68 for water and dust resistance. And it's got the A18 chipset, just like in the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus. However, this one has been downgraded a little bit in terms of power. And we're going to get to it in the performance section. And also, this one particularly costs £699. Well, I'm sorry, I just cannot resist it. But in the UK, it starts from £599. The starting price of this phone for 128 gigabytes of storage in the UK is £599. The starting price of this phone at 128 gigabytes of storage is £599 in the UK, 679 euros or $599. The starting price of this phone in the UK for 128 gigabytes of storage is 500 I'm gonna pee myself. The starting price of this phone in the UK for 128 gigabytes of storage is £599. In Europe is 679 euros. And in the US starts at $599. Hey, I managed to nail it. Good for me. Why do I smell pee? Uh-oh. Now, it is obviously very funny, and it's really difficult to resist it, but I don't want this to be a bashing on, iPhones or on Apple. And if this was an Apple bashing video, it would be like a 3-week long video, and on day 2 we all would be wearing tinfoil hats and have piss jars all over the place. Nobody wants that. So let's crack on. We're going to see what positive features this one's got, and we're going to try to do a critical review of it. And along with it, we're going to be very entertained. At least I will be. So let's delve into it and crack on. Now let's quickly go over the build. We've got a Corning Gorilla Glass on the back and specified what version. We've got an aluminium frame, and we've got ceramic shield glass on the front, again unspecified what version. On the side, we've got the action button. We've got the volume rocker as well. That's on the left hand side. Just underneath the action button is the volume rocker up and down. On the bottom here, we've got the triple mic and USB-C charging port and stereo speakers. And on the right hand side, we've got the power button. As you can see, it does not have a camera button here. It's not going to be missed because the implementation was not that great on the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro as I tested it. The one on the Oppo Find X8 Pro was way better than on the iPhones. But anywho, let's see how much it weighs actually. It's very light. It's 6.1 inch screen, and it's a 4000 milliamp hour battery, so 168 grams. Yeah, it's very light, and that's good. Here are the main specs. There's nothing special about them, and it's just a typical Apple offering you yesterday's technology for tomorrow's pricing. Well, in this case, it feels like the previous decade's technology for the next decade's pricing, really. The phone is very compact and small, and it does feel good in the hand, and on the back it's very smudge resistant. It doesn't leave fingerprints easily. That matte finish on the back is pretty cool, not just visually. Something pretty curious about the iPhone 16e is that it only got one SIM card in its slot and space for two eSIMs, and I expect it to be the other way around, two physical SIM cards and one eSIM. Huh. The highlight of this phone is undoubtedly the speakers. They're so good and they're so clear, and also got spatial audio. Everyday use is anything but smooth. That 60Hz refresh rate really ruins the whole experience, and the software is not exactly the smoothest one, but you still get iOS 18.4. And as every other iPhone, you get 5 years of software support. Here's a quick comparison between iPhone 16e with 60Hz and a phone with 120Hz refresh rate. Just pay attention, and then I'm going to tell you which phone is the one on the right. As you can see, the one on the right is way smoother, and that phone on the right is a 4-year-old phone, and actually it is. Oppo Find X3 Pro from 2021. That 60Hz refresh rate on the iPhone 16e firmly belongs in the previous decade. That ancient refresh rate, along with the thick bezels and the ugly notch, are really a thing of the past. They are completely obsolete today. Another hilarious feature that you can get is in the accessibility and motion. You can reduce the motion of the screen. I had no idea you can go below 60 Hz. There is a small bit of customization on it. You can choose between light and dark mode on the screen, which is something, I guess. And also, they have carried over the audio mix from the 16 series, which is great. And watch my iPhone 16 review and the 16 Pro review to find out more about the audio mix. It's a pretty good feature. And as mentioned, another feature that they have carried over from the more expensive siblings of the 16e is the action button, and you can customize it as well, or just leave it with no action whatsoever. I did leave it with the camera on, and it works okay. The much maligned ugly notch on the screen is not only ugly and hideous, it's actually quite insecure. I did mark it as being identified only with the open face and no mask on, and yet the sensor actually recognized me with my sunglasses and my hat on. Ridiculous, really. One thing that wasn't present when I did the reviews for the 16 and the 16 Pro was the Apple Intelligence, and it turned out as expected to be all hype and no substance. It is nothing groundbreaking, nothing significant compared to what Google and Samsung have already done. Hey Siri, how to make a sandwich? No. Hey Siri, what's the largest country in the world by area? Got that right. Hey Siri, Manchester City. Oh, still no. Okay. 40th minute. Hey Siri, How to make a sandwich. How to make a sandwich. Hey Siri, what's the largest country in the world by population? Well, very. At least the good news is that it still supports Gemini, which is way better than Apple Intelligence. It also has support for ChatGPT. You can both type or say it out loud. How to make a Philly cheesesteak sandwich. Now let's talk about the display. The thick bezels, the refresh rate, and that ugly notch are the only things holding it back, but they're still significant, unfortunately. When it comes to brightness, the phone unfortunately is nowhere near as bright as the iPhone 16 or the 16 Pro. It's still legible outside, but not really great as you can see from this one. But don't worry, you can still use it if you're in a gloomy country like Britain. I'm not so sure if you're in a warm country like Ecuador or the Philippines or Hong Kong or something. The phone does have great contrast and colors and also supports Dolby Vision and HDR10. Incidentally, I could not make Dolby Vision work in Amazon Prime, but it worked in Netflix. The screen is actually pretty sharp at 457 pixels per inch density, and it's also a peculiar 1170 by 2532 resolution. It's more close to Full HD than 1.5K. Nonetheless, any content you watch, animation, sports, TV shows, or movies, looks great apart from that distracting ugly notch. Interestingly, the iPhone 16 does not have always on display. Now moving on to the performance, the 16E has the A18 chipset but is a bit downgraded. It actually returned quite good scores in the stability when I put it through 3D Mark, and anything above 60% in those tests is pretty good considering the demanding chipset. In the Antutu 10 test, the 16E scores by more than 100,000 points less than the iPhone 16 and the iPhone 16 Pro. However, in the Geekbench 6, which is of course a limited test, it scores pretty well and favorably, despite the fact that it is cheaper and also smaller. And just for fun, I did an AI test and also scored pretty well compared to its bigger siblings, which is impressive. The iPhone 16e has 4 core GPU instead of 5 core on the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus, and yet it still delivers similar results, a little bit less but still pretty powerful, which is impressive. It holds its own pretty well, and gaming is not an issue even though it is still locked to 60 Hz, which is another shame. Moving on to the battery, the iPhone 16e has a 4005 mAh battery with very slow charging in typical Apple fashion. Of course, the phone does not have a charger, so you have to source your own. Any 25-watt charger will do. I charge the phone from 0% to 100% in 1 hour and 28 minutes, which is very, 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 very bad, but it's still much better than the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro. In 30 minutes, I got 55% on the clock, which is okay for an iPhone and absolutely terrible for a smartphone, especially with such a small battery. The phone has wireless charging at 7.5 watts. However, it does not support the magnetic MagSafe charging of its more expensive and bigger siblings in the iPhone family. In terms of battery life, 1 hour of phone calls took down the battery by 4%, 1 hour of web browsing took it down by 4% as well, 1 hour of watching videos took it down by 7%, and 1 hour of gaming took it down by 13%. Those scores compared to the iPhone 16 are worse. However, overall, I would rate this battery as good. Nothing special or great about it, but still good for most people's needs. And also a quick reminder that fast charging does not damage your battery life. It's just a stupid, stupid lie. And last but not least, let's have a look at that camera. It's just one. It's a 48 megapixel sensor with optical image stabilization, and it can do 4K at 60 frames per second. On the front, we've got a 12 megapixel selfie, and it can do 4K at 60 frames per second as well. Unfortunately, the 16E's camera does not have cinematic mode. Even if the cinematic mode and the 120 frames per second option are missing, the phone is still very capable in terms of features. It's got the stereo sound, spatial sound, Dolby Vision, HDR, and so on, just like its bigger sibling. And just like on the other iPhones in the 16 series family, you can choose between 12 and 24 megapixels of selfies. In a very surprising turn of events, the iPhone 16e actually has several photographic styles to choose from, which is quite surprising. You can use the standard mode or you can use any of the other 4 modes available, and that customization is actually quite good. Let's start with the selfies. They're actually quite alright. I did like the colors, and also the detail is good. The skin tones and the dynamic range are also good. I was overall pleasantly surprised by the performance of the camera. In portrait shots, the separation of the subject is pretty good, and the focus is on the human subject himself or herself. I did these selfies in the standard mode, and one thing that is quite obvious is that that's not typical Apple rendition. The colors are more vivid and expressive, which is good for me because I don't like the blatant, usual, boring Apple rendition that gives you very natural, dull colors. The same goes for the main camera. Well, it's not a main camera, it's only one camera on the back. I'm used to saying main cameras because modern phones, especially at this price point, have 2 or 3 cameras at least. And on this one is only one camera, so it is still a little bit more vivid colors. The detail is good, the dynamic range is okay. There is some digital, how to say it, over sharpening. However, the overall quality of the picture is fine. These are not flagship level photos, but they're still overall good for most people's expectations, really. The camera does 2 times digital zoom, and this is not a telephoto lens like Apple is calling it on their website. But then again, when has Apple ever lied? They always tell the truth. However, back to the camera, the zoom is okay overall. It's a little bit over processed at the edges, but not bad at all. It's just a very basic implementation of a camera at this price point, which is super duper disappointing and an absolute rip-off. The night selfies are better than I expected, and the colors are overall good, and there is more detail than I anticipated. And also in portrait shots, the separation of the subject is overall fine. So yeah, on this one I'll give thumbs up for the night selfie performance here. Definitely better than most in this category. The night shots from the only camera on the back, my bad, I'm still not used to saying that, holds up okay in the nighttime, and the detail is okay, and also the high dynamic range is decent. It could be better, but again, it's not exactly a flagship device. And the shadows are a bit soft and there's some noise in them, but not too bad. The colors do remain accurate and relatively consistent. And the 2 times zoom, it looks a little bit brighter than it should be probably, but still it does an okay job. Oh, you know, the camera performance at nighttime on this iPhone 16e is passable, so it's not as bad as I expected. Nothing special, but then again, nowhere near as bad as I thought it would be. Now let's move on to the video. Alright guys, this is the selfie video. It's 1080p at 60 frames per second. This one is the 4K at 60 frames per second. Right, this is the 1080p at 60 frames per second from the only camera on the back. Usually I say from the main camera, but not here. Again, 1080p 60 frames per second, but 2 times zoom. Again, cropped from the only camera on the back. There is no telephoto here. Apple are lying as usual. And this is 4K at 60 frames per second. And 2 times zoom, again 4K at 60 frames per second. (1080p) at 60 frames per second. (4K) at 60 frames per second. (4K) 60 frames per second. Two times zoom, 4K 60 frames per second. Well, there you have it, folks. The iPhone 16e, the most amusing phone of the year. Totally not worth the price that Apple is asking for it, as usual, actually, but this one is really hilarious. At £599. This is a phone that costs no more than £399, maybe actually £299, but that's beside the point. It's got some good things going on for it. The chipset is pretty good and powerful. And the screen, 60 Hz disqualifies it automatically for me, but the rest of it is pretty good. It's sharp, it's got Dolby Vision, and it's bright, not as bright as iPhone 16, for example, but still it is okay for outdoor viewing. Not great, but okay. And the battery is overall good, very solid, nothing exceptional, not the best in its class or anything like it, but still good. The camera, one camera, its performance okay. It is nothing to write home about, but for most people's needs would be absolutely fine, including for posting on social media, at least if it is during the day. Night photos, not so much. And the build is solid, still gets 5 years of support from software support from Apple. And another thing that actually impressed me was the stereo speakers. They're very good. They're very, very good speakers. I like them very much, but not worth it at all. Then again, Apple fans would buy it anyway. And again, it's your money. You can waste it however you'd like. Thanks very much for watching and see you next time. Ciao.